Okay, welcome to WooWoo Mama's podcast. I'm Colleen and we're here with Gina Petropoli and our guest, Ellen, tonight.
Tonight we have Ellen with us, and she was kind enough to come on to share her story about her daughter, Saige. Her daughter lost her life to drugs, like fentanyl in particular. And she is here to share her story because we want to bring awareness. And we also feel that if there's anyone out there that needs hope or knows somebody or a loved one that is struggling, we hope to be able to be of some help, or whether it's a resource, whether you want to reach out or just to hear the story and get some sort of consolation. So, Alan, we're going to turn it over to you, and we would love to hear your whole story about your daughter and what happened.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I'm really glad to be here. I'm honored that you asked me to share this story. Anytime I'm asked to share our story, I definitely do, because it's a good way to keep her here with me, but it's also a good way to feel like we're helping others that might need to hear our story. And I'll tell you, yesterday was the 5-year anniversary of her passing. So
wow.
Yeah,
I just got chills.
yeah.
Wow.
I definitely, if I'm a little bit scattered, that's definitely why. But let me see. I guess I'll start with so when I got pregnant with Saige, I was young. I was 21. And I was adopted, so I didn't have my own birth story. So she was the first person in my life that I was related to, that I was blood related to. And I also, because I didn't have my own birth story, I really didn't know, I was going to the doctor and I was taking my prenatals and all that, but I still was like, I don't really know what this thing is happening. I was almost positive that I was going to get to some point and they'd say, well, it's just a tumor. And, that's why your stomach's so big. And so it was a really different experience for me. And then, of course, when I had her, we hadn't found out the sex of the baby. So at that appointment, my then husband and I were both kind of like, no, we don't want to know. And as soon as we got home, we were like, no, we definitely want to know. And we called back and they wouldn't tell us. So I desperately wanted a girl. So I figured, well, I want a girl so desperately. This is probably a boy. So I did a lot of talking to her, and when I was pregnant, and saying, listen, it's okay if you're a boy, and I might be a little disappointed, but it's not you, that's me. And I did a lot of those conversations with her before she was born. And then, she was born and I made my husband check twice.
Just to be sure.
Yeah. I had even painted her nursery. I was so in love with the idea of doing, the pink and purple nursery. And instead I only did primary colors, thinking this is a boy and I have to get used to this. And there she was, my little girl. And she was 9 pounds of my little girl. So she was super tiny, but yeah, it's a big, healthy girl. She was just a beautiful baby, so beautiful. But she had colic, but we were so young, we didn't know it was colic. We just figured all babies cried for 24 hours straight, and, for days on end. And we didn't even understand until after I had my second baby, who was like, the perfect baby that never cried, that, oh, wow, Saige really had, there was like an issue there that we didn't know, but we got through it. But from the moment she was born, like I always had this feeling like I just wanted to put her back in. Like I just felt like so protective, but like I didn't want the world to harm her. And that was my feeling from the moment she was born. And, talking about that with other people, most moms were like, oh, sure, the fear of having a baby, the fear of, I was like, it was something more than just that. It was more than just like her falling down and hurting herself or, anything like that. So that was, I don't know, that was a big, big fear I had. We didn't let it, I didn't let it stop me from doing anything with her. But yeah, it definitely was. So, so then let's see. She, sorry, we do have other people in the house at the moment. Sorry.
Okay.
Um,
That's all right.
she was, let's see, I'll take you up to preschool. So when she went to preschool, that was another one. My husband at the time was a painter and he was working on a house. And so I dropped her off at her first day of preschool and I was a mess. She went in okay. She detached from me and went in and was happy to have little friends and toys. And I went to where my husband was painting and I was a sobbing mess. And I remember his boss came down. He said, "What do you think they're going to do with her? It's preschool. She's going to have a good time. She's fine." But there was still just this feeling of like, it was just something I couldn't describe that was special to her that I didn't have with my other children. Um, so she went to preschool. She had a great time at preschool. She made friends for life. We were very lucky because it was a little preschool in our little village. So the kids she started preschool with, she went all the way through high school with.
Wow.
Yeah, so very tight group, which was nice. And all the moms, it seemed like all of her friends were the youngest of the group, whereas Saige was the oldest of my crew. So I had a lot of really good mom friends at the time too that were older than me, a little bit more experienced that, could kind of guide me, which was nice. I always appreciated that. Um, she was always drawn to the underdog. One of her best buddies in preschool was a little girl named Carly who was quadriplegic. And Saige would sit next to her every chance she got and pretend to read her books and pretend to, play with the babies with her. And so she had this very soft heart for people, and she always did for people that were, looked upon as maybe not, that were differently abled in one way or another, whether physically or mentally. That was where she was drawn. So, um, I was a dance teacher. So she started dance when she was 3. And she was a very good little dancer. By the time she was 5, we had her like leading the class of other little 4-year-olds. And she loved it. She had a great time. She was fantastic dancer, fantastic visual artist. The kid could draw. She was drawing like people, faces, and little bodies when she was 18 months
Wow.
old. I mean, she was really, yeah, it was, she definitely had that talent.
She was gifted.
Yeah, yeah. And artistic and definitely drawn to that sort of thing. Um, Elementary school was, it was it was good. It was good. She had, like I said, her friends, I gotta say, right up through high school, especially her girlfriends were just, and they still are, they're just incredible people. She had she was lucky in that, I guess, that she attracted those really good friendships, those really good female friends that, stuck with her through thick and thin.
Yeah.
But let's see, when she was 8 is when I had my second. So she was 4 when I had my second baby. She was 8 when I had my third. So her sister and then her brother. And so that when I had my second baby, when she was 4, her sister, she was a little bit pinched with that. She had already had 4 years of being an only child, and their birthdays were only 5 days apart. So she was always a little bit like, I don't know. It was nice having a sister, but it was also nice being an only child.
Yeah.
But they found their path, and they did all the fun sister things that I always thought would be fun. Doing their hairstyling. They go do, what did they call it? Oh, Rita's and Rita's. That was their salon, and they would make a little sign on the door, Rita's and Rita's. Do each other's hair and makeup and all sorts of stuff. And then I had my third, and by the time Max came along, Saige was 8. So Saige was very much into big sister mode. So every time that Max cried when he was a baby, she'd go scoop him up and bring him to me. And I was like, it's the middle of the night. We're going to try and let him cry for a minute. No, definitely not. Nope. So, so it was sweet. She was definitely a fantastic big sister, but also a very typical big sister. There were definitely those times of when she would get annoyed. I remember one time I had the let's see, it must have been Hope, my middle one, in the car seat. So she was probably 6 months old or something. And every once in a while she'd start crying. And I'd say, Saige, why is she crying? What's going on? And Saige would go, I don't know. I don't see anything. So I finally moved the rear view mirror and I watched Saige lean over and pinch her, scream. I said, why did you pinch her? And Saige said, well, because she's annoying. She's a baby. She's just so yeah, she was, typical in those regard. But also she was the big sister that when they were a little bit older and Hope was having a hard time with boys, Saige was the one that was stepping right up and saying, listen, first of all, you don't need that boy. And second of all, what's his name? Because I'll go tell him that you don't need him. So they had their moments. So then, when she got into high school, she was a decent student, not great, but passing. But I'd say it was probably end of sophomore year. She had a couple of really nice boyfriends. One in particular that was just a lovely, he still is. He's just a lovely human being. But after him, she had a couple that were, just not him. They weren't that guy, but they were definitely people with issues. And like I said, she was definitely drawn to people that were having issues. We did a lot of therapy at that time. I tried reaching out to different resources in our community. There wasn't much. And because of where I live and who we are, they just, I got a lot of, oh, she's fine. It's teenager behavior. She'll get over it. And I didn't necessarily believe that. I was still, looking for help because like I said, I was adopted, so I had no family history. But on my husband's side of the family, there was a very strong history of bipolar disorder and addiction, substance use disorder. So I was very aware of that. And I made her very aware of it too. There was a lot of, when I was watching her struggle with her mental health and trying to help her stay regulated, sleeping patterns were a big thing for her that I knew. So I would be really upfront with that. But as a typical teenager, she's not going to listen to her mother, much less believe me.
So Ellen, do you mind if I just ask one quick question?
Sure.
So you basically, like, did you really see the changes with her like sophomore year? And was it more just like behavioral things, like maybe just more like, going against what you're saying, not listening, wanting to do her own thing? Was it that type of stuff?
Yeah, it was okay. That typical sort of thing. Yeah. And then it was a little bit more. It was this
more than rebellion.
Yeah, it was definitely like a shift in personality. So it wasn't just that normal teenage stuff. And it wasn't all the time either, so there were definitely cycles. I was witnessing cycles and I couldn't get anybody else to understand that I was witnessing cycles. So by the time we got through junior year, struggled, we struggled, but like the good days were good, the bad days were awful. There were a couple of times that she walked out the front door and I didn't know where she was for, hours. And she wasn't going away overnight, but it was definitely hours. That it was like the advent of cell phones too. So that was tricky. That was very tricky. And that was also, there were things that I was noticing that could trigger that personality switch in her. And one was being on the cell phone, not getting enough sleep. It was like night and day. It would definitely change her. When she was, end of junior year, she was way off the rails. So she had met this one particular guy who lived in the next town over. So she was doing everything she could to get to the next town over. And I was kind of, at this point, I was a single mom. So it was just me and the 3 kids. So, I was trying to say, have the guy come over to our house, where I can kind of supervise things, but also to kind of normalize this and, let me see who he is. And she didn't want to have any part of that. So, she was becoming more attracted to the excitement or I don't know, the red flags or something about this sort of dangerous person.
Hmm.
So it must have been end of junior year. Things were very out of control, and she was getting to be um, just really hard here. She didn't want to be here. She wasn't, being kind to her siblings at all. We were having a really hard time. So at that point, I got her father involved, because he had also had substance use disorder struggles, mental health struggles. So I thought maybe he can help. Maybe he'll understand this and he'll be able to reach her on a level that I can't. So she moved in with him at that point, and she was there for her senior year. She went to a different school for her senior year because her father lived in the city. And hey, she had the same struggles there that she had here. And it was tough. It was really tough. We didn't really talk during that time. So that was very hard. Very little. My mom was very instrumental in, going and picking her up and meeting us at one of her siblings, dance recitals or soccer games or things like that. So she'd show up. But things were hard, definitely hard between us then. But I kept kind of just letting it go, loving her from a distance. I'd send her emails or messages and texts every once in a while, just thinking of you, love you, let me know if you need anything. Didn't get a whole lot of response, but I also wasn't really in communication with her father either. So it was tough. It was like a whole year of not much communication and not knowing what she was doing and still having that feeling of like, I just want to take her and keep her safe from the world of where she is. And I tried at that point, every once in a while I would send a lengthier email explaining, we don't know what our family history is on my side. We do know what your father's family history is. There are places for you to get help. You know of all these places where you can get help. If you need me to help you get help, I can do that too. And even if you don't, I still love you. So, just let me know if you want to talk. So we did that for a while. She did kind of come around. She started dating this other guy when she was 20. I think, yeah, maybe end of 19, early 20. And she started coming back around. She'd come over and hang out with her sister and her brother and, watch a movie or two and then take off. Or when we were having family parties, she was back into the family party thing. She didn't bring this guy around though. And, my other two kids were kind of like, eh. It's like, okay, yeah, I get it. That's okay. She's young. We're supposed to have these. That's when you do these things. You try it out. You see what you like, what you don't like, and what works and what doesn't work. And that's okay. You can do those things. So, I think it was the summer that she was 20. So it must have been July or something. I was planning a trip to Disney with the other two kids. And she was here and we were doing, I don't know, we had some 4th of July party or something. And she wanted to stay the night. So she was going to stay the night. And I was in my room, I don't know, probably watching a show. And she came in and she snuggled up with me and she said, well, I got to tell you something. And I was like, well, okay, you can't tell me. And she said, well, I'm pregnant. And I was like, okay, great. Because I knew I also had this, had her when I was young. And I knew that no matter what, I only ever wanted to respond to that I'm pregnant with positivity,
Yeah.
no negativity. If this is what she wanted, that's cool, great. We will do this. I will help you with whatever way I can. So I went, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Of course, inside I'm like, okay, great. I'm too young to be a grandma. This is, oh my God. Like, of course, the wheels start turning,
Yeah.
but to her, it was just, I'm excited. And I was excited because babies are wonderful. That's great.
Right.
And being a young mom myself, I know we get through this. We have good family support. We can do this. And um, she's like, yeah, okay, so yes, I definitely want to keep it. And I'm thinking of all the things that I have to be doing and, work and do I want to go back to school right now? This, that, and the other thing. And so I said, well, whatever you need, this will be exciting and fun. And I mean, for me, because you're the one having the baby. I hated being pregnant, but you're gonna love it. It's gonna be great. So I was like, well, do you want to come to Disney with us? Because this is probably the last time we'll be able to do this without a baby, And she said yes. So we went to Disney, the four of us, and it was great. We had a blast. We had so much fun. And she and I went to a spa. We had our own spa day, and it was just really nice. We had a very fun family vacation. And so Julian, my grandson, was along for the ride, right? He was there. So
Yeah.
came home and things went south pretty quickly with the guy. And so she decided that she wanted to move back in here. Here's a safe place. There's no drugs, there's no alcohol, there's no abuse. Those are things that she's always known about this house. So she asked if she could move back in, and I said, absolutely. And she moved back in, and she had a great pregnancy. Oh my gosh, she was a great pregnant person. She was active and like loving every second of it. And I loved it too. It was great to be able to experience pregnancy where I was able to, relive all the good parts, the highlights of my pregnancy, and be there with her and watch that belly grow and know that there was that little guy inside and go to her doctor's appointments with her and all of it. And so, so when she was I don't know, maybe 2 weeks away from her due date, maybe 3 weeks away from her due date. And I had her convinced that all of my babies, except for the last one, were 14 days overdue. And so she was convinced she would just be overdue. And I said, well, have her father was a massage therapist. And so there's a special place on your ankle that you can kind of massage and press. And he did that for me with our last one. And my last one came a day early. So I said, well, have your father do that pressure point. And so she did. And so, of course, this baby came 2 weeks early because her father was really good at that. Yeah. But she was convinced. She was absolutely, as was I, that there was no way this baby would be early. So we had gone to her brother's basketball game and we had been sitting on the bleachers. And we came home that night. She's like, my back hurts. I think it's just from sitting on the bleachers. I was like, oh, yeah, probably. My knee hurts, whatever. I said, I'm going to go upstairs to bed. And I said, okay. And we had done the baby birthing classes. But she and I had a riot doing the baby birthing classes. And it was just a really fun time. So she went up to bed, and sure enough, probably 1 o'clock in the morning, she came in and she's like, Mom, I really don't feel good. I said, all right, we'll lay down and I'll do some massage like we learned in the baby birthing classes. And she's like, okay. So did that. And probably an hour later, she's like, I really don't feel good. I said, yeah, okay. Because I'm still thinking, first of all, we have 2 weeks. And second of all, I don't know what labor, I also was induced for all of mine. So I don't know what natural labor looks like. So she finally said, oh, I'll go take a shower. And I said, okay. And like 20 minutes later, I still heard the shower going, and I kind of went in and she's on the floor in the bathroom. And I said, okay, well, now we got to go to the hospital. Let's go. She was like, nope. And I said, yes, come on, let's go. And it was February. And I thought, well, once we get out in the cold air, she'll feel better. So her brother was here, and we got her up and we got her downstairs, got her dressed and downstairs. And we got out into the cold air, and that didn't help because this poor girl was like in hard labor at this point.
Oh my gosh.
So drove to the hospital. I thought that her feet were going to go through the dashboard. I'm driving and I'm like rubbing her
I
arms.
remember those days.
I know, me too.
Oh God. We got there, and they came out with the wheelchair, walked in, and 10 minutes later she had a baby. So we were close. We were very close.
Wow.
That was her. And she told me after the fact, she said, because I kept saying, well, if we get you because when she was on the bathroom floor saying, I'm not leaving, I said, if we get you to the hospital, we can get you some pain medication, and then this won't hurt so much. And she told me afterwards that she was terrified of taking pain medication, any pain medication. She didn't want it for herself and she didn't want it for the baby, but she was also scared to say that out loud in case she needed it. So she was really on the fence and she didn't want to tell me any of that. I was like, oh my gosh, I understand, but you could have told me that. We could have talked that through. So the next day, so the cool part was she was 10 minutes, here's the baby coming. My son was there at Saige's head, kind of like whispering, like, you're doing great, keep breathing, doing all this great stuff. And I got to cut the cord. And so that's how our little guy came to be. And she came home and she was phenomenal. She was from the get-go, these two were bonded like much more so than she and I were from the get-go. She nursed like a champ, like just naturally could do these things that I remember when I had her were so difficult. Um, she was able to stay home with Julian for the whole first year of his life. She was his main caregiver. Like I was really Nana. I mean, it was a co-parent here. So she was, she would be able to hand him off to me when I came home to work and, take a shower and do all those things. But she was his mom. She was great. I mean, and I'm not shocked, but I also was just in awe that she was so good at this.
Mhm.
And like a natural teacher, she was constantly like teaching him to explore and teaching him to, for all of it. So it was really cool. It was such a good experience.
Ellen, can I interrupt for just a second, just ask the question? So during her pregnancy and during even after Julian was born, was were those sort of roller coaster emotional mental health issues, were they there? Were they present? They weren't.
No, no, and not even after he was born. And that was striking to me because the one I was very concerned and focused around like a postpartum depression because I had gone through postpartum depressions with all three of mine that weren't necessarily recognized at the time. So I was very like that was my heightened awareness for her because I was waiting for it. Like I was waiting for that other shoe to drop and for her to not be able to handle this, not be able to handle those, not sleeping, being up every 2 hours with him.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen. And even through that whole first year, it did not happen. And I was surprised because I was waiting for it. She also, she was like intentionally keeping her life very peaceful. So she had really excluded a lot of people that were giving her stress and only included, her friends who were able to be supportive.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
who were, able to be sane and sober. And she really gravitated towards those friends and really pushed out the other people that couldn't give that to her. And then her complete focus was Julian, 100%. Yeah. So that's where, when he was 17 months old, she had been fighting with her wisdom teeth. All four wisdom teeth were constantly impacted and infected. And she was still nursing. But at this point, Julian was nursing, but, he was also eating solids and that sort of thing. And it had been months that she had been doing, different rounds of antibiotics, just trying to, and, clove oil. Like every time I smell clove oil, it brings me right back to this time period. And so the dentist was finally like, you need to have these wisdom teeth out. It's not going to get better. It's just going to get worse. And there's nothing we can do except pull them. So she put it off for as long as she could because she didn't want to have anything while she was nursing. She didn't want to do anesthesia. She didn't want to do any painkillers for Julian's sake. But at 17 months, we were kind of like, he's eating solids. He's going to be okay. He's kind of self-weaning. So she said, all right. So she went to the oral surgeon. When she was going in, I said, don't do all four at once. Just have him do one, maybe two, because that's tolerable, but all four at once. I had that done. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. And she went in and she said, okay, well, I only want to do one or two. And they said, well, insurance will only cover all four. So we're going to do all four.
Oh, no.
So yeah. So they did all four at once. And, I was there with her. Julian and I were there with her. I was in the waiting room. And when she came out, the nurse handed me the script for oxycodone. And I had it in my hand, and the thoughts running through my head were like, how can I switch out these pills? I mean, my daughter's an adult. I mean, at this point, she was 22, and I didn't want her to feel like anything. Like, I didn't want her to feel like I didn't trust her or that I was thinking something. But at the same time, I didn't want to fill the script. I didn't want to give it to her. I just didn't. And
So was
but
that was your intuition, right? Because did you have any reason really for thinking that before?
only the family history that we had. That was it.
Wow. And I
my
just want to clarify something for myself and for whoever's listening. Up until now, I mean, I know that you had like some behavioral things that you had noticed in her, later teen years. Was there any drug use up till then, or was it more behavioral stuff?
I would say, from what I know, I
Mhm.
would say that the drug use was like pot,
Okay,
drinking, very
right.
typical teenage stuff.
The
Yeah.
typical, but
Yeah.
like I think we would call that like the lighter stuff,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you want to call it that. Yeah.
Experimentation. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Friends were doing it. She was there. She was doing it too, that
Yep.
sort of thing, but nothing like this.
Right.
Yeah, so I filled the script. We came home. She called the OBGYN, she called the dentist, she called the pediatrician to say, am I really allowed to take this while I'm still nursing? And they all said, yeah, it's fine. It's not going to bother him. It's fine. And she said, well, okay. She was, I mean, her cheeks were here, black eyes, just the
Wow.
classic. Yeah. Um, so she started taking that. That was in June. By July, she had left my house, left me with Julian, and was gone and using heroin. So it was less than 3 weeks from the
Okay.
time that, yep.
Wow. So like um when I'm a counselor, and so there's some pattern here, right, that I pick up, right? And I don't know if it's like a chemical or spiritual or emotional. I don't really know, and I'm not in that realm to even talk about it. But there is almost some kind of a switch that happens for some people. And I don't know, Gina, if you know of people who it's something switches in their brain. It's like a literal like switch. And that's what it feels like, right?
Yeah, that's really fast. And I have to tell you, like, I'm so glad that you're sharing this for
Yeah.
other parents, because having your wisdom teeth out is such a common thing. And I will say, when my daughter had her wisdom teeth out and they wanted to prescribe that, I said, we're not doing this. And not because like, and I was saying to myself, I doubt something would happen, but I'm still not gonna let it can happen.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really can happen. And that blows my mind that
Mhm.
she went from, this mom with no issues with this to using heroin
Yeah.
three weeks later.
Yep. Yeah.
How does that happen?
And so
Yeah.
Ellen, and I also want to bring up, I've been taking some notes while you've been talking. I also want to bring up how intuitive you both are, right? Because she's so intuitive and in touch with her body and her baby's body. She doesn't want to have an epidural. She doesn't want
Right.
to pass that, okay? And you're so sensitive that you're walking out with this prescription saying, should we do this? And even though it was based on, potential factors and variables from your husband's history and family and so forth, there was still something in you also, right from the moment you were with her when she was born, is this intuitive protection that sort of, in my mind, as you were describing it, goes a little bit beyond the playground, you know, it was like, you know, so with all of that, there's some kind of a message in it, and it's really this intuition, right? The spiritual connection to something higher than yourself that you were keenly aware of, and so was she. Like,
Yep.
so, and
Yeah, that's a
so,
great point.
yeah, and so we're going to call this part one, and we'll head into part two in just a moment. But I just want to point that out, that there is this spiritual component to this. I don't claim to know. I mean, I'm a physical being just like the two of you. I don't claim to know why these things would happen. I don't know. I don't even understand it, to be quite honest. I mean, I can't understand it even in my spirit, right? But because you were tapped into something so much higher, okay, than what was really going on, and so was she, right? This earth plane was temporary, but the spiritual plane, it goes on, right? And so you still, I'm getting choked up because it's so beautiful that you still have this this gorgeous connection with her. And not without the sorrow, of course, and not without the pain, but that it continues on. So we'll end there. This was part one with Ellen. Thank you so much, Ellen, for telling us about her. I'm like falling in love with her as you're telling. Like,
I know.
like
I
strong
know.
woman, and this, it's like I'm so glad to like know her through you.
I know, honestly. And I just want to add one thing before we end part one. You listen to your intuition many times, even when they were trying to tell you, when you said that you were trying to bring it up to people and they're like, oh no, she's fine. So every mom out there, your gut feelings are stronger than anything else. And you have to always listen to your gut, because my mom, I always call it, my mom instincts trumped any knowledge that anyone had about my children. I knew my children. I always have. I always will, and always listen to those instincts, because as a mom, they are strong and they're usually always correct.
Yes.
And I'm going to say this, whenever spirit's around me, it's like a refrigerator is around me and I am surrounded. I don't know if you're feeling it, Colleen.
Yeah,
It's like, I feel like I have a refrigerator around me right now. So, and can I just say one more thing? I always call these synchronicities. There's always all these different terms for things, but most people out there don't know that. So I did not know until you came on saying that tomorrow is the 5-year anniversary of your daughter. And when
yesterday, right?
Yesterday was?
Yeah.
Yesterday. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you meant tomorrow. We were supposed to do this interview a week ago. And it got pushed to this weekend. And when that happened, I actually said to myself, I said, there's got to be a reason for this. There's going to be something that comes up that's going to explain why it didn't happen last weekend. And you said it in the beginning. So, and oh God, that coldness that's surrounding me.
Yeah, Ellen, you're deeply spiritual. I feel that just from the moment that I got on with you. So so we will end here, and those of you who have been watching, we thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope that you watch part 2. So thank you so much. This is WooWoo Mamas, and we'll see you in part 2.
See you in part 2.